Hello everyone and welcome to the tiebreaks of the 2019 FIDE World Cup. Teimur Radjabov versus Ding Liren. It's quite a messy game, but we were expecting messy games when we get past the classical time format. And everything stays the same. They are battling it out for the first place for the $110,000. That's basically all there is to it, as they have both already qualified for the 2020 candidates tournament. That being said, let's just dive straight into it without further ado. So, Radjabov with the white pieces opens with knight to f3. The Re8 opening is on the board. We have d5 by Ding, d4, knight to f6 with c4 and e6. And with knight to c3, we transpose into the queen's gambit declined, of course. And c5, the semi-tarash. With c captures on d5 by Radjabov, knight captures and e3. And c captures on d4, trading everything in the center. E captures on d4, and now even knight captures on c3. B captures on c3, improving white's center. And queen to c7, now developing the queen again with a threat. With bishop to d2 by Ding. Somewhat of a passive move with the bishop, but it's if it works, why not? You're gonna play rook c1. At some point, you're gonna push the pawn to c4, and the bishop will come alive. With knight to d7 by Ding, and now bishop to d3. Just developing, preparing to castle kingside. b6, Ding is ready now to fianchetto the light square bishop this way, and knight to g5. Just a very nice piece, creating some threats on the kingside. Black will not be all that eager to castle there, and maybe you can get some h6 here, so you can weaken Ding's kingside. Knight to f6 by Ding, now defending the h7 pawn twice, and queen to f3, developing the queen, going after the rook on a8. Rook to b8 by Ding, defending, and now castles by Radjabov. And here bishop to d6, putting pressure on Radjabov's h2 pawn. Queen to h3 defending, now you still cannot castle as there's a triple attack on the h7 pawn, so h6. And here Radjabov, after thinking about the position for quite some time, goes knight to f3. And already the time on the clock is much different. Radjabov has 12 minutes on the clock, whereas Ding has 26 minutes on the clock. There is the seemingly aggressive rook f to e1, because the knight cannot be captured. There's no point in moving it right away, but then you allow bishop captures on h2. And then after queen captures, now the knight can be captured with check, and after you move the king g4, and if it was a classical game, white would be perhaps somewhat better due to the bishop pair, but here in a rapid game, not something you want to force with black, so with white. So knight back to f3 by Radjabov, and now there is one game in the database where bishop to f4 was played. Seems like a reasonable idea, as you don't want to kind of allow c4 and this bishop maybe getting to b4, but Ding goes bishop to b7 first, and it is as of move 15 that we have a completely new game. So rook f to e1, now with some ideas of maybe at some point sacrificing the rook here, then the bishop can come to g6, the queen can come to e6. Ding first captures the knight, gives up the bishop pair, with bishop captures, queen captures, as this allows him to grab a pawn. And bishop captures on h2 with check. Radjabov doesn't mind giving up a pawn, king to f1, and now bishop back to d6. And here queen again back to h3, again with some nasty ideas here, as the king is still in the center of the board. And here, queen h3 was not played yet. I switched the move order. Actually, c4 was played here before that. Now, if bishop to f4 was ever going to be played, now this bishop can assume this nice diagonal. This was Radjabov's idea. And only after Ding's h5 move, and now you can't castle here. That's the point. If you castle here, then you run into bishop captures, and queen captures here, just destroying Ding's king side. So here Ding tries h5. He wants to play king to f8, and maybe at some point play g6, king g7, and get the rook into the game somehow this way. And now queen to h3, the move I thought was played in the previous move, but now again a lot of threats against the Ding's king, as it's still in the center of the board, and only now Ding moves it, king to f8. So now the king is much safer there, and you are planning g6, maybe at some point get your king into a safer square. With rook to b1. Now Radjabov's plan is he wants to make a very nice rook lift here with rook to b5 to g5 and get the rook into the attack as well. You have to decide what to do. If you go into g6 with king to g7 right away, then it's you always have to ask yourself, can white play something like bishop captures and rook captures on e6? But it wouldn't be good for white right away. But you have to constantly keep an eye out. You can play king f7. This now becomes a threat. Queen captures here with just picking up the rook. So a lot of dangers here. But okay, Ding just plays the solid move, rook to d8. And now bishop to c3. Now the bishop is already on a very nice diagonal. Some g6 ideas followed by king g7. You can go d5, open up the bishop's diagonal. Very tricky for Ding. But Ding's plus side is that he's still very much up on the clock. And he goes rook to h6, getting the rook out of this nasty diagonal. And also now preparing maybe some kingside expansion with g5, h4, and g4. And here we have a4 by Radjabov. He wants to play a5 and weaken Ding's queen side, maybe even get c5 in at some point. And here the situation on the clock is 16 minutes Radjabov, 16 minutes Ding, 5 minutes for Radjabov. And Ding goes h4 first, not going for g5 right away. You could always go for g5, but it's a tricky line. For example, if rook b5, keeping an eye on the g5 pawn, now knight to d5 is very strong, as you will not be able to capture it because of queen captures on c3, and also if this knight comes to f4, it will be very unpleasant. Not g5 right away, but first h4. Now with the idea, Ding doesn't like knight d5 with a lot of calculation required. He wants to go knight h5 to f4, so getting the knight to f4 this way. And here we have king back to g1. Just an in-between move, not going for rook to b5 right away. So Ding continues with his plan. We have knight going to h5. The knight now wants to go to h4. And bishop to f1 now with more defense to the g2 pawn. We have knight to f4. Now the queen is under attack. Queen back to f3, and now rook to f6 by Ding, just positioning the rook on the same file as the queen. And also, if h3 right away, then g3 is perfectly safe for white. Radjabov was able to calculate that with a low time on the clock. If h2 check, king h1, and now let's say a trade happens here, that's nothing to be worried about. You're going to push c5, and it's there are a lot of threats for white also in the position. You can go rook captures on e6, and there are a lot of dangers. Your bishop captures on g3 it does not work for black. So after queen to f3, we have rook to f6 by Ding, like we said, and now comes queen to e4 by Radjabov, getting the queen out of the way. And here it was well, it was a very intense moment. The situation is 3 minutes Radjabov, 10 minutes Ding, and Ding goes back, knight to g6. Although there was the idea of going h3 right away. Now g3 can be met with knight to h5, and all sorts of threats become possible. Like you could sacrifice the bishop on g3, pick it up with the queen after capture, then you could pick up the bishop on c3. But still, it's a rapid game. Radjabov down on the clock. You don't want to overcalculate it and allow Radjabov to calculate it as well. So instead, knight to g6, and now we have rook to b2. Just getting another defender to defend the second rank, and now comes h3. So it's similar, but not the same. Like we said, you cannot push g3. The bishop will munch it up right away. So g captures on h3, and now rook to f4 by Ding, pushing Radjabov's queen back. Queen all the way to h1, and now knight to h4. And this is really a crazy position. We have rook to e3, a very nice rook lift, as now both defending the bishop and also guarding the third rank. And now comes rook back to f5, opening up this diagonal for the bishop. And also the rook is very important there, as it doesn't allow knight to f3 check. So rook to b5 by Radjabov, not allowing this rook to g5 check, which would be deadly. And here Ding played e5. He blocked the rook's defense of the fifth rank, but there was an even better move. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the move that Ding missed, which is just game over for white. While I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent giver up of the bishop. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to c5, and this is now deadly. The rook no longer defends g5, rook to g5 check will be deadly, and of course if you capture the rook, then still just rook g5 check, bishop will block, and then just rook to d1 as the d file is now open. You will block, and now comes queen to f4, and here white is completely tied down. You can do pretty much whatever you want. There's not much. You cannot block with the rook. Rook captures on e1. If you do nothing, just rook captures on g2. Completely winning for Ding. But Ding played e5 instead. It serves the same purpose. Rook to g5 is coming. But here Radjabov manages to get c5 in. And now Ding has to decide what to do. Now rook to g5 is not the same, because here you can block with rook to g3. And it's hard to decide what to do here. There is a very interesting line, although impossible to spot in a rapid game, is e4. And now it just all hell breaks loose on the board. For example, if rook captures here, then you have this bishop to h2 check, which is just insane. Queen captures, and now knight f3 check. Of course, you have to play something. King g2, let's say queen captures on h2 is checkmate, but it's not forced. But after e4, it's just hard to find a move for white in a rapid game. But instead, Ding goes back, bishop to e7, and now quickly queen to e4, freeing the h1 square for the king, also pressuring the knight and the rook on f5. They're all defended, but still, there is pressure. We have rook to f4, pushing the queen once again back, and here the situation is 10 seconds on the clock for Radjabov and 1 minute for Ding. C captures on b6 first, offering a queen trade. Ding recaptures, and now queen to h7, threatening mate in 1. Knight back to g6, guarding the h8 square, and now just rook b captures on e5, doubling up here. And well, it seems that Ding is no longer on the attack. It seems Radjabov is on the attack now, and he also consolidated very nicely. We have rook to h4 by Ding, sort of trapping the queen, but not really, as Radjabov can defend. Rook to h5 with captures, and now bishop to f6. And again, here Radjabov goes for queen to b5, but there is a much better move, although with so little time on the clock, impossible to spot. But feel free to pause the video and try to find this wonderful idea for white. Well, I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on being an excellent pusher of passed pawns, or in this case soon to be passed pawns. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, a5 is just a game changer here, because if you capture, then just bishop captures wins the material. Here the queen and rook are on the same diagonal. If you don't capture, white will push a6, create a passed pawn, and that's a winning passed pawn. But okay, like I said, impossible to find with so little time on the clock. We have queen to b5, and now comes knight to h4. We have bishop to b4 check, king to g8, and now rook to e8 check. That's the idea behind queen to b5. Rook captures, queen captures with check, and king to h7. Sorry about that. And here queen to e4, again with check. We have g6 blocking, and now comes d5. Here Radjabov is starting to push his past d pawn. Ding plays knight to f5, and here seems like Radjabov rushed it. He played d6, just giving up this passed pawn with the idea that he can do something. It's hard to say what, as he has very little time on the clock. Ding just grabbed it, and he played queen to f6, now with a double attack here and here. But Ding has knight to e8, defending the queen and the bishop here. So a queen trade occurred here with queen captures, knight captures, and now bishop to c4. So it's equal material on the board, but play on both sides of the board, and the Radjabov with the bishop pair, going after the f7 pawn. So king g7 with bishop to d6, and now knight to e8. And here bishop to b8, just nicely controlling the knight here, preparing bishop to b5 to harass the knight. So bishop to d8, creating an escape square for the knight, with bishop to e5 with check, bishop blocking. Ding wants to trade now, and here they are equal on the clock, I believe 30 seconds each, both playing on increment. Bishop back to b8, and now bishop back to d8 by Ding. With bishop to f4, Radjabov doesn't want to draw, he still has the bishop pair. Bishop to c7, and now bishop to e3. Putting pressure on the b6 pawn, with knight to d6, going after the bishop, bishop to d4 check, f6 now, and now comes bishop to d3. we have knight to b7, bishop back to c2, and now knight to d8. Just maneuvering around, bishop back to e4, and now knight to e6, with bishop to e3, and now f5 by ding. So slowly making progress on the king side, bishop to c6, and king to f6. We have king to g2, and now g5 by ding. So moving forward with the pawns, bishop to d7, and now Ding just played knight to f4 check, and here Radjabov had to make a choice. Does he want to continue? Does he want to trade? He decided to trade, and after bishop captures on f4, it was in this position that the players agreed to a draw, as it's 3 pawns each and bishops of opposite color. It is a drawn endgame. So yeah, really insane game. Round 1 of the tiebreaks, of the rapid tiebreaks. I do hope you enjoyed it. Really crazy stuff. So game 2 probably is just about to begin. So I'm about to check that out as well. And if it's a nice one, we're gonna show that as well. So I do hope you enjoyed it. Chances on both sides, but in the end, a remarkable draw with equal material on the board. So yeah, I would like to thank Ferdinand, Albin, and Linus Ryan, and Charles Schroeder for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Checking up on the FIDE World Cup, checking up on your suggestions, and so on. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.